Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
Here we are, the two of us.
Yes, we are.
If Patreon's your thing, head on over to patreon.com. Mike will tell you a little bit more about it.
Yep, putting Office Blokes React. We're doing live, full watch-alongs of Family Guy Saturday evenings. We do full watch-alongs of US Office as well on Wednesday evenings. Loads of other videos on there. You can get all that for just £1.50 per month.
Bargain.
Now, if you go up to the £5 tier, we're also doing sort of like longer version stuff like comedy specials. But we're doing Delaney College at the moment, aren't we?
It's called Last Chance You. Yeah.
Last Chance You. We're doing full episodes of that. It's really good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm well into it.
Really enjoying it. I love like sports-based sort of like programs like that. So if you want to try that out, go and check us out at patreon.com.
Absolutely. A bit of interesting facts here on facts. I don't know if they are. Secret Russian documents reveal when Putin will use nuclear weapons.
Ah, right, okay.
A bit of infographics. Not done them for a while.
I was going to say, we've done a few in the past, haven't we, infographics?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit tasty out there at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
With what's going on with the back and forth with NATO and USA and Russia and Ukraine and
never ending, innit?
Ukraine's got its cap out. Excuse me, it's got its cap out constantly.
Yeah,
asking for money in
money in arms and planes and bombs and stuff like that.
And then it's all getting a bit touchy around the Middle East and around them areas.
Yeah,
so it's which way it's heading. Yeah, everyone just needs to calm the F down.
Calm down.
Don't know. Right, exactly. Let's get into it. Secret Russian documents reveal why when Putin will use nuclear weapons.
An invasion by China and using nuclear weapons early in a war against the United States. A recent leak of Russian secret documents has revealed Russian nuclear strategy and alarmed many at just how willing Putin is to use nuclear weapons. It's been widely known that Russia is a fading power, with the war in Ukraine exposing the rotten core of the Russian military. What's never before been revealed, however, is that Russia was aware to a degree of its own weakness and just how quickly it would rely on the use of nuclear weapons to balance out this weakness. Officially, Russian nuclear policy for decades included a no first-use policy, meaning it would only use them to retaliate against another nuclear or weapon of mass destruction attack. Nuclear weapons would also be used if the existence of the Russian state itself was threatened. Then in 2020, Vladimir Putin did away with the no first-use policy and expanded Russia's nuclear policy to include retaliation for wide-scale conventional attacks that caused critical damage to the Russian Federation. In a sense, modern Russia has a policy of escalating to de-escalate, using a nuclear weapon even against massive conventional attacks in order to de-escalate the conflict on terms favorable to itself. What few outside the Kremlin knew, however, was just how low the threshold for Russia's use of nuclear weapons really was. The leak of classified Russian documents includes 29 secret Russian military files drawn up between 2008 and 2014, and despite being 10 years old by this point, analysts believe that they are still highly relevant, especially in light of Russia's abysmal performance in Ukraine.
I watched the recent video of people sort of like just getting going on by the business. I've got some friends who live in Russia, live in St. Petersburg, but they've wanted us to come over. Gain is going to be a godparent to one of the kids nice. when they get baptised, but not been able to go over obviously. So I don't know if that's bypassed now or the waiting still. Okay. I don't know. But it's one of the places where I really fancy going, St. Petersburg.
Really?
Not so keen on Moscow.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's St. Petersburg. It's somewhere because I'd have a tour guide.
Yeah.
So it'd be a lot easier for me, I guess. But I was watching videos of what going by the day-to-day lives, and it just looks like a calm environment.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. When you see like other big cities, like it's just carnage, sort of thing. But I don't know. It's
very historic, isn't it?
It's very historic. Yeah. It's got a lot of history. Yeah, big time. But it just makes you wonder what's going on over there and why is he, what the plans are going forward. He's a bit of a nutcase, isn't he?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't sort of get him really.
And I think he's right. Russia have lost they've lost a little bit of face with what's going on with the war in Ukraine.
Oh, I think they thought it'd be over fairly swiftly, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think they thought they'd overwhelm Ukraine and be, after a few months, it'd be pretty much done and dusted. But it's clearly not worked out like that.
It's one of them guys that's sort of like, when you in the schoolyard where they're like a bully. They go around until someone gives him a slap, and then they sort of like back down a little bit.
Yeah. He likes to talk tough.
Iran's the same out of China, Iran, Pakistan, Russia, North Korea. Yeah. They've all got them similar sort of like antics, haven't they?
Yeah.
Well, see what this is.
Documents detail the use of tactical nuclear weapons rather than larger strategic weapons meant for use on large military bases or cities. These battlefield nukes, as they're often known, are significantly lower in yield than strategic weapons and often have been dialed up or down as necessary. Even so, they're still very powerful weapons of mass destruction. During the Cold War, the Western Allies envisioned the use of tactical nuclear weapons as a means of stopping the massive hordes of Soviet-blocked armored vehicles that would come pouring into Western Germany in case of war. The Soviets likewise saw tactical nuclear weapons as a way of leveling the playing field against increasingly sophisticated Western technology. Today, Russia's ever-weakening position on the international stage has created a degree of desperation and self-awareness over just how non-competitive the Russian military is against its traditional rival, the United States of America. After Desert Storm, Soviet military planners were thrown into a panic. At the time, Iraq had one of the largest militaries in the world and an extremely robust Soviet-built air defense network. Watching it get picked apart over a matter of weeks, as well as the collapse of Iraqi forces in Soviet tanks and infantry fighting vehicles against superior American equipment, sent a shockwave through the Kremlin and immediately prompted the reworking of war plans in case of a confrontation against NATO. It was clear that the only way to stop an American armored thrust was with nuclear weapons. As Russia emerged from the wreckage of the Soviet collapse, the gap between itself and the US and its allies only widened. The second US-led invasion of Iraq would once more send alarm bells ringing off throughout the Kremlin. The American contingent of 130,000 initial troops was inside of Washington even considered to be suicidal against the numerically superior Iraqi army.
Difference is, when you've got 130,000 US troops, you've got 130,000 very well-trained personnel.
Yeah, well, probably the best trained.
Yeah,
you don't get trained any better. I don't
no,
think,
probably
anywhere.
not. Probably not.
So,
yeah, there's probably equals around the world, but not certainly not better. But when you've got that going up against people who are not nowhere near as qualified or as trained in that in certain combat, then it don't make it 4 for 1 in it really.
Yeah, you think in general the equipment would be better. I know there's been issues in the past where some equipment hasn't been up to scratch, but in general the equipment is usually the best equipment. Plus
they're
apart from
prepared
that, and the backup as well.
Yeah.
You know, with air support, things like that. You know, they've got like the best weapons in the world, haven't they? So
I mean, when you look at NATO as well, they're just very well prepared. Everyone sings off the same song sheet, don't they?
I guess so.
Sort of thing, whereas you see what's happening with Russia now, it's a little bit of a
bit fragmented,
chaotic,
maybe sometimes, isn't it? A bit.
Yet lower-level commanders and analysts calling for more forces had significantly underestimated the massive force multipliers that the U.S. had developed in just 10 years after Desert Storm. Up against an estimated 500,000 troops, 4,000 tanks, and 3,700 armored vehicles, the U.S. suffered just 139 killed and 551 wounded, versus Iraq's up to 45,000 KIA. Once more, the Kremlin realized it was completely and utterly outmatched by the US's far superior conventional power. To rectify this, the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons would have to be significantly lowered, or else the Russian Federation would swiftly collapse in the face of a NATO attack. But the leaked documents also show that it wasn't just the US and its NATO allies that Russia was worried about, but also its very large and increasingly powerful southern neighbor in Asia. Even as Putin was attempting to forge closer ties with China, the secret leak of documents showed that the Kremlin was increasingly paranoid about a Chinese invasion into Russia. Once more, nuclear weapons would be the first line of defense. And there's good reason for Russia to fear an attack by China. Despite seemingly warm relations between the two, before the war in Ukraine, Russia and China jointly declared a no-limits friendship. But when Russia invaded Ukraine just weeks later and began to lose badly, China was very quick to show that there were indeed firm limits in their friendship. On February 25, 2022, China abstained from a UN Security Council vote denouncing the invasion. And again on March 2nd, the nation abstained from a General Assembly vote condemning Russian aggression and demanding the withdrawal of its troops. Since then, China has walked a fine line between not being alienated internationally by supporting Russia and ensuring the Russian war effort doesn't completely collapse into disaster. Even so, China has a vested interest in the Russian state itself collapsing. Emerging from its century of humiliation, China is now looking back in time and finding ways of addressing past wrongs against it by European powers. Between 1858 and 1860, the Russian Empire annexed vast swaths of Chinese territory by forcing treaties upon the weaker Chinese state. Initially, China refused to agree to the demands, but its loss of the Second Opium War forced it to affirm the Russian annexation of territories known as Outer Manchuria. This move cut China off from the Sea of Japan while opening up warm water ports for the Russian Federation, and the territory itself has proven to be resource-rich. China has not forgotten the humiliation of the treaties forced upon it. And in 2023, the official Chinese map-making agency released new maps with Chinese names for the annexed territories instead of the Russian ones. It's not just a matter of bluff and bluster, though. Russia's very grip on its Far East territory is weakening. The ethnic Russian population has been decreasing year over year, and an estimated 6 million Russians in the territory face nearly 40 million Chinese directly across the border.
You know,
I never knew about that, you know.
what?
About Russia having like an annexed part of China.
Yeah, it's like Sakhalin and all around there, and it's like the real Far East part of Russia.
I never knew that.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, it's bloody been up there. It's cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking about this, a few months ago, I thought to myself, I wonder if China's preparing to backdoor Russia here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way he was talking there and things that were happening when they were abstaining from votes.
Yeah.
And he was sort of like, they were on Russia's side, and all of a sudden he sort of like came back. It was like, no, you're showing too much aggression with Ukraine. And I thought,
Yeah.
I wonder if China backdoors Russia and just fucking invades without, just
Well,
proper unexpected.
You just never know these days,
No,
do you? I mean,
no.
I always thought they were sort of fairly close, but by the sound of it, maybe it's just a bit on the surface that, the way they sort of get on under pretty sort of allies, I'm guessing, aren't they? But that's what interests me, is because Russia's got some of their territory by all accounts.
Yeah, when you remember
Would it
years
be
ago,
a time when they're weak, when they are fighting Ukraine?
the BRIC countries years ago were all like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I don't know who else has sort of like joined in that sort of like network of sort of like countries that sort of like form them, the BRIC countries. But what you've got now, they're even talking about sort of like going against the dollar and sort of like using their own currencies with rubles and yuan and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking of China sort of like bringing them in, sucking them in, sort of like just sort of like go bam, and take it, just sort of like dominate them and go, you're ours now.
Yeah. Maybe.
It'd be funny if it wouldn't be funny because it'd be messy.
It'd be very messy.
But it'd be kind of like something to look at and go, Jesus, fell for that one. Yeah.
The Chinese investments in the region are rapidly outpacing Russian investments, a situation compounded by Russia's weakening budget and the exodus of Western capital from Russia. With no other choice, Russia was forced to attempt to replace European and American investments with Chinese money. Yet many in China are seeing this as an opportunity to renegotiate the territorial settlement of 1994 that officially ended sovereignty disputes between the two nations. As has been commonly put by Chinese commentators, why should Chinese money go to develop stolen Chinese land on behalf of Russia? The leaked documents show just how paranoid Russia has become over a Chinese incursion into the region. The documents included training materials for the Eastern Russian military district to fight off a Chinese invasion, with multiple different scenarios highlighted. Per the various scenarios included in the documents, if the Russian military failed to defeat the initial invasion force, then local commanders were called to use tactical nuclear weapons against second-echelon Chinese forces in order to stop them in their tracks. What is unknown is if these nuclear strikes would take place once Chinese forces crossed the border or on Chinese soil itself, a difference which could dramatically escalate an exchange of tactical nuclear weapons into a full-scale strategic exchange. After the leaks of the documents, the Chinese Foreign Ministry denied that there were any tensions or hostilities between itself and Russia, stating, quote, "The Treaty of Good Neighborliness, Friendship, and Cooperation between China and Russia has legally established the concept of eternal friendship and non-enmity between the two countries." And yet, despite this, not only has China refused to provide badly needed military aid to Russia, on May 18, 2023, the same day as the meeting of the G7 in Hiroshima, China hosted its inaugural China-Central Asia Summit, inviting leaders from 5 Central Asian nations to attend. These 5 nations, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, were all former Soviet republics and nations that Russia has historically seen as under its sphere of influence. On May 18th, Russia was humiliated by being left out of both the G7 and a meeting headed by China of its former Soviet territories. And this was not an accident, as China has increasingly expanded its influence into Central Asia and works to dislodge Russia as the dominant power in the region. Chinese investments in the region skyrocketed to $70 billion by 2022, and Russia's regional trade is less than 2/3 of China's own trade with Central Asia. However, the insecurity of the Russian military expands past just China, forecasting the dire situation it would find itself in if it had to go to war against a major conventional power, either China or the US. The documents also spelled out specific battlefield defeat conditions that would trigger the use of nuclear weapons. One of these conditions was the successful amphibious landing of an enemy force upon the Russian mainland. The Russian Far East is difficult to defend given its vast expanses and how vulnerable Russian logistics are for actually getting troops into the region. the scenario is likely aimed squarely at the US, as it's incredibly likely that in the case of a full-scale war between itself and the US, the American Marine Corps would launch an amphibious assault on Phokino, headquarters of Russia's Pacific Fleet, and Vladivostok itself. While Russia has rail connections to rapidly move troops and equipment from its western military districts to the area, there is little hope that it would be.
That was the area I was thinking of. I couldn't think of it before. Vladivostok.
Ah, right, yeah.
He pronounced it a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, he did. I thought that was it.
Able to protect those railways from American air and missile attack, leaving its Far East forces stranded against superior US firepower. In such a dire scenario, the use of nuclear weapons would be the only way to dislodge the American invasion force. A second prompt for the use of nuclear weapons would be the defeat of Russian border defenses. Similar to fears of a Chinese penetration, the doctrine calls for the use of nuclear weapons should an enemy force successfully penetrate into Russia, with nuclear weapons used to significantly attrit follow-on forces and prevent a catastrophic breakthrough. The world saw just how poorly Russia is suited to respond to enemy breakthroughs in the fall of 2022 counteroffensive by Ukraine, which saw the nation retake vast swaths of occupied territory in a matter of weeks. The stunning counteroffensive was possible due to the use of misdirection on the Ukrainians' behalf, but also because the Russian military had failed to spot and identify a buildup of Ukrainian forces and respond quickly while under fire to a rapidly evolving breakthrough. How a nation with an air force the size of Russia's was unable to prevent such a catastrophic collapse of the front lines remains a mystery, but it is indicative of the overall weakness of the Russian military. Another trigger for the escalation of the use of nukes is the loss of 20% of Russia's ballistic missile submarines or 30% of its attack submarines. Both of these make sense, as Russia would rely on its attack submarines to try to prevent the US from reinforcing Europe in case of war, or to interdict an invasion of its Pacific coast. The loss of its undersea portion of the nuclear triad is likewise an alarming proposition for Russia, given the fact that there is practically zero chance a Russian nuclear bomber would ever successfully deliver its payload to an American city. With US ballistic missile defenses becoming increasingly powerful over time, the efficacy of Russia's ballistic missile forces is also in serious question. Submarines, however, allow for the launching of weapons closer to enemy shores and from unpredictable locations, making interception very unlikely. The loss of its ballistic missile submarines would thus potentially leave Russia vulnerable to a catastrophic nuclear attack it could not successfully deter or retaliate against. More worryingly, though, is just how fast Russia is willing to use nuclear weapons in even far lower stakes scenarios. The loss of just 3 of its cruisers, 3 airfields, or a simultaneous attack on its main and reserve coastal command centers would all trigger a nuclear response. This is worrying because there is little doubt that the US or even China would promptly sink any Russian ship foolish enough to leave the safety of shore-based air and missile defenses. And given that Russia has already lost 1 cruiser to Ukraine, this specific threshold is incredibly low. Likewise is the loss of 3 airfields to enemy attack. The United States or China would inevitably target Russian airfields in order to ground its air force. Although given just how many Russian aircraft have been shot down by Russian air defenses in Ukraine and within Russia, it might just be better if they simply allowed Russia to operate its airfields unharassed. The documents also outline various options for the use of nuclear weapons by commanders in order to avert battlefield defeat or to enhance the effectiveness of the Russian Navy. The latter is likely aimed at destroying the US and Chinese carriers, which pose a significant threat to the Russian Navy and which it's poorly suited for countering at the moment. Overall, though, the document itself insinuates the use of nuclear blackmail by Russia in order to gain a degree of freedom in its actions. One of NATO's chief concerns has been a fait accompli attack against the Baltic states. In such an attack, Russia would launch an attack into one or more of the Baltic states and either seize a small amount of territory or attempt to take their capitals, which most analysts predict the nation should be able to do before NATO firepower descends on the region, at least prior to the joining of Finland and Sweden into the alliance. Such an attack would throw NATO into deliberation over the implementation of Article 5, over territory that some NATO states, such as Turkey, or a United States under the leadership of someone like former President Trump, may not see as worth living up to treaty obligations over. At the first sign of a major defeat, Russia would rapidly escalate in order to de-escalate in its favor. This would involve the sudden use of tactical nuclear weapons or multiple, either directly on NATO forces or in close proximity to them, causing low damage but testing the resolve of the alliance. NATO would then be forced into one of 2 options: allow Russia to use battlefield nuclear weapons while sticking to only conventional weapons, or simply acquiesce to Russian demands and allow it to hold territory it took from NATO. In effect, Russia would be using nuclear weapons to blackmail other nations and give itself the freedom to do as it pleases, as long as it picks a fight it can win quickly and then go on the defensive. This reckless ideology is not only inherently dangerous, but dangerous because it encourages similar behavior from other nuclear states, such as North Korea, or perhaps even India and Pakistan, should their historical feud heat up once again. The world would then see a nuclear arms race on a truly global scale, and it would become obvious to all that the only way to ensure one's safety is to have nukes of your own. In short, Russia's reckless nuclear policy is not just dangerous to enemies, but for the entire world. Modern Russia, in a very real sense, has become the kid on the block who runs his mouth, can't back it up, gets punched in the face, and then comes back later with a gun. The reveal of the secret documents has thrown into question the West's proper reaction to Russia's aggression in Ukraine, given how low the nation's threshold for the use of nuclear weapons is. Yet, at this inflection point, it's even more dangerous for the West to not react and therefore set a precedent for nuclear blackmail. Such a failure to stand up to Russian aggression would only encourage more aggression down the line, and should Ukraine fall, Europe will find itself with the largest, most experienced army on the continent at its doorstep, and a Russian economy fully mobilized for war. Now go check out U.S. Congressman...
Interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting video, that. It's, I can just sort of like see like the encroachment of China going in there. When you look around the world, and I would, like I say, been many places, especially in Africa as well,
Yeah.
you see a massive influence of China.
Oh yeah, they're
Huge
getting everywhere now,
influence,
aren't they?
yeah.
Buying up land and so just all sorts of
Yeah,
places.
even the infrastructure, the roadworks, you know, the mobile phone, the
like
networks,
into mining, I think, aren't they?
mining,
Things like
big
that,
into
for
that,
precious metals and things like that. So
big investments going into Africa.
yeah,
And then, you know, if they've got Russia right on the doorstep, you know, it's sort of like just pretty much surround it, don't they?
yeah,
So like
Absolutely,
especially
yeah.
in the Far East area. But I don't know, it's getting very touch and go, because as soon as one goes, they're all going to go, aren't they?
yeah.
I know you've got things like Israel, Palestine, and then you've got, you know, Iran. People
Just
sort of like
constant,
touching and
innit?
waiting to go, and
Yeah,
there's quite
I
a few of the Arab nations around
Yeah.
there are all sort of like touching to go.
Yeah,
India, Pakistan,
yeah.
England, France,
England, France. Yeah, in
England, Scotland.
Yeah, England, Scotland. Yeah, I mean Ukraine. In the end, it'd be interesting to see how it works out. I'm guessing maybe they might just take a bit of land on the eastern front, I think, isn't it? Like east or southeast of
Yeah, you've got like
Ukraine, which some of it's sort of been annexed already, hasn't it? I think
Crimea, like Odessa and all around there.
That's
and,
right. There's a few areas around there, and so you just wonder whether.
But that
in
gives
the
them the
end-
seaports that they want as well,
Yeah,
sort of
I
thing,
know it
which
does.
takes that away from the Ukraine. So it's,
Yeah.
so I know it's been under Russian rule for a while, but I think a lot of these, you know, your Uzbekistans, your Kyrgyzstans, Tajikistans, and all around there,
Yeah.
all ex-Russian, all ex-Soviet states.
Yeah,
you know,
of
where
course,
would they rather be under Chinese, sort of like,
Well,
sort of like
it's an interesting one.
Chinese, not rule, but sort of like Chinese influence. let's
Chinese
say.
are sort of, as a world economy, is sort of on the up, aren't they? They're sort of like, let's say,
Huge.
spreading sort of everywhere,
Yeah.
aren't they? Tentacles into business and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of the countries around there might say, better off being on their side.
Yeah,
I
'cause
think
they're getting money.
they're the more powerful ones,
Yeah.
more money coming in from them.
Yeah.
So,
Because they're
probably
probably
in
getting
their
nothing.
interest.
And I know Russia's sort of like trying. I think that they bargaining off like gas and things like that.
I would guess so.
Into
Yeah.
certain countries like your India's, sort of
Yeah.
like cheap gas to sort of like get them on side.
Yeah.
But it's the world's at a tipping point, isn't it? Let's say.
Yeah,
it
it's
just lets
just-
everyone just calm the F down, like I say.
know, yeah, come on,
Yeah.
take a step back, everyone.
Yeah.
You know, but it's
But
Yeah.
especially
Interesting times, eh?
we've got an election coming up this year, so
Yeah,
we're
we
going to have new leaders.
I would think so. I would guess so. I mean,
if it's the most obvious thing ever,
I'd
that's
be
switching over.
surprised if there wasn't going to be a change. I must
Same.
admit.
Yeah, if the Conservatives get in again over here, I'll be very, very,
Yeah.
very surprised. That'll be the
Yeah.
biggest shock of politics around the world, I think, if they
Yeah.
get back in. So that looks like it's going to change. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the USA. Don't really follow
Yeah.
it. Don't really follow it
Is
close
it,
enough. It's
like
not
November, I think, is it?
my, November.
election
Yeah. It's not my.
Keeping out of it.
Yeah, it's not my fight. So it's
No, I mean, I don't.
Mine's here.
I'm
with
no,
our
I'm
politicians.
no expert in the politics in the US. There's always a lot more
No,
going
me
on.
neither.
Different issues
Yeah,
over there, so
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's not for me to sort of like.
I just know that I'm looking for the politicians over here to come knocking on my door. I'm waiting for them.
I bet you are.
I'm waiting. Yeah,
I
and
can-
it's,
I can just imagine,
I've
yeah.
got a lot of questions that I need answers to.
I think I might send them all to your place. Actually,
I was away last week. I was at the football and game.
Oh,
They
yeah.
texted me and went to try to get in the building. I went, oh man, the one day I'm not there. And
you
everyone,
missed it.
it's a group on the building. They're all like, the politicians are trying to get in. Don't let them in. I was like, God, if I was there, I'd be straight down at the door.
I think over the next few weeks, they'll be round again.
Yeah.
Don't worry about
Absolutely.
that.
I actually go where all the bars are on the main strip to see if they're walking up and down there, so I can grab them there as well.
Oh,
I actually go looking for them,
hunting them down. See, most people avoid them, don't they?
I've got too many questions and need answers to.
Jesus Christ! I bet they rude today that they catch up with you. Oh, God.
Lot to say. Anyway, it was interesting, wasn't it?
It was,
I found
very
it
interesting. Yeah, always good videos.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.